You're probably aware that there have been escalating tensions between India and Pakistan. Joining us is Dr. Tahir Abbas, who is a professor of radicalization studies at Leiden University. He's also an honorary professor in Arabic and Islamic studies at Exeter University. We also have with us Dr. Komal Raja, who is a poet and anthropologist at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, and Shams Rahman, who is a broadcaster, journalist, and author. He's also a founding member of Jammu Kashmir Television, which is more commonly known as JKTV. And I'm Dr. Sarina Hussain. I'm an associate professor of sociology at the Center for Peace and Security based at Coventry University. I'm also an adjunct professor at Quaid-e-Azam University in politics and international relations, and a non-resident scholar at the Institute for Regional Studies in Islamabad.
Thank you for that, Serena, and good to see you all, really. I want to take the opportunity to just put on the table some of the initial impressions that we've been formulating over the last 4 or 5 days, because it's all very rapid fire and also very recent, with imminent with the ceasefire that's been just announced as well. And for us in the West, we get very limited information. It's very piecemeal, rudimentary, sometimes incredibly fake. It misdirects, misinforms. We want to try and get a sense of what is actually happening on the ground. What are you experiencing? How are people dealing with these issues? And what is the relationship between local people and the state, if there is anything at all there to discuss? And obviously, this is a very important issue in terms of a kind of two nuclear power countries, and there's the risk of it becoming full-scale, all-out conflict if we're not careful, with two nations who are not talking to each other, and the Kashmiris, as always, caught in the middle, who are the voiceless voices here. And I think we can hear from Pakistanis and Indians all day long, but we really want to take this opportunity to hear from people who are there right now, experiencing this, enduring this stress, but also hopefully able to give us some meaningful observations that we can then communicate to a larger audience who are also like us, desperate for some truth, some clarity, and a sense of what happens next, especially as this ceasefire was announced literally 10 minutes ago. So that's just a few opening remarks around our need for clear, useful, objective insights into what is actually happening and where do we go from here is the basis for our conversation.
Creating this opportunity, because it is really important, the local voices to be heard. I would start with this thing that is consistently on my mind. Being an anthropologist, I'm also, I can't help, theorizing things along with the things that are happening around me. So even sometimes, I was wondering on how the war situations and the escalations dictate even your personal life decisions, and how your agency, it doesn't remain anymore situationally. It really depends on the situation, the loss, the mourning, and the harm that people went through, the psychological impacts, the traumas, the fears, and the kind of disruptions in our daily life, in our normal life. They will take, I think, maybe, I don't know how many years, maybe centuries, maybe never, that one recovers from it, especially the little children who goes through such kind of traumatized atmosphere, when they see their parents fearing, when they see where they see this fear in the way, in those people who they trust, that who are there to give them security. I think I'm also not very much fluent in jotting my thoughts down in a very sensible or a meaningful way, but I'll try my best. So it's that I came to Pakistan from Germany in the start of May, and the Pahalgam attack. I think everybody knows about it now. So it happened before my arrival in Pakistan, and I did not. People were also telling me that this is not the right time to go there, and why you were. But I did not take it too much. That, okay, it will not reach to our personal lives perhaps, but even I don't want to the people's response about the Pahalgam attack, the way Indian government was portraying it as that, you know, this kind of terrorist activity had happened on the land, Indian territory, and we will not let it go. And they were putting allegations on Pakistan, and they did not go for the international or neutral investigations. They did not have any evidence, but they then out of nowhere started this war by believing that yes, it was Pakistan. So even for that attack, I had my own opinions and I had my own impressions, because why it always has to be the land of Jammu and Kashmir. If it's a false flag, then why always Kashmir? So there are so many answers to this why, starting from the international, international parties involved to the local ones. But the people's response was still, I was so sad to see that how the deaths of those tourists and the people who were injured and affected by that attack were anonymized and were reduced to the headlines and to the numbers. And even there were fake AI generated pictures circulating around. So that is how you even try to anonymize the suffering, the pain. So it is really, really getting dehumanization of the pain and the emotions. So that was really worrisome for me. But anyways, when I arrived to Pakistan, I really had a my academic talk in one of these platforms, Black Hole platform. And in that platform, like, people were also telling me that it's not the right time to have conversation about the region like Pakistani administered Kashmir, because my research is based, regional focus is Pakistani administered Kashmir, in which, as you said, that we call it in our lingua franca as Azad Kashmir. So, but I persisted on having that talk because this is what I wanted to talk about, that Azad Jammu and Kashmir, or the entire region of Kashmir, is not only about war. There is normal life also going on. There are so many, like, people are traveling, they're going, they're meeting their family, their marriages are happening over there. For example, when I called my mother, there was this war hysteria going on and predictions all over Pakistan, and people were telling me, my international friends especially from different countries, that this is not the right time to go to Pakistan. War might instigate, and why are you going? And then I was telling them, how can I not? And look at, for example, you guys who are sitting in on distant lands, you imagine things in terms of 010101, you know, these algorithms and the information being thrown through the screens. But when I talk to my mother, she is very excited, she getting the house painted, she is waiting for me to arrive at home. And my mother was, all she was worried about, like, I'm like, hello Amma, how is the situation at home? People are telling us to cancel the flights. It was like on 1st of May, not even, you know, the thing had started this escalation on 7th of May. So she said, like, all I'm worried about, beta, is that we had got this house newly painted and now the rain is going to happen. So I am worried that I'm praying that God, please don't send rain today. So I was literally very much prepared to talk in my in my conversation or in my seminar, to want to talk about this, in that normal life goes on. People there are not all the time worried about getting bombed from India or Pakistan, or getting politically. They are not all the time thinking about their political future, or they are not hyper politicized all the time. They also live normally. Then, Sarina, I planned to go home on 7th of May, the day I wanted to. Like, I had booked my car and I wanted to go there, but during the night of 6th, it was like, you know, already 12:40, 12:30. So it was like, technically the date was 7th of May, the same date that I planned to go home. And then I received these messages from my sister, and I was like, in the middle of night, why she is sending me so many texts? So it might be something important. And when I looked at it, and it was like, the three cities of Pakistani administered Kashmir have been bombed, like Muzaffarabad and Kotli, and it was also news about Bahawalpur in Pakistan and a few other places in Pakistan. So from I was being away from my homeland, not very far away, being away from my mother, being away from my family, and then listening these type of news, it was like so. I don't know how to put it in words. I mean, I just lost it. And then I also try to make sense of the thing that we were having a drawing room conversation on something like, you know, everyday chit chat with family. But then all of a sudden, this kind of news changes the entire, not only the topic of conversations, but something changes inside you. And then these kind of concerns and fears and all kind of uncertainty just takes over your mind. So that's how it started. Maybe now we move to Shams, and then I might be able to recollect myself and talk further.
So Shams, I just wanted to hand over to you. I mean, how have things been?
For common people, I don't think it was much because this was not something very new. A lot of things happened before in last 25 years. So these kind of incident happened and then response and all that. But obviously amongst the people who were politically kind of active and aware, there was anxiety that what India will do now. So a lot of people were obviously speculating different things. And one of the main thing was that perhaps, um, they, because of the Indian elections and Modi's kind of popularity going down and all these things happening, so they might do some kind of strike like they did in 2019 when it happened in Pulwama. So they probably do something like that, and then few days, and that's it will be over. And this was general kind of that's what people were generally thinking and talking about. But when this happened on the night of 6th and 7th, so this was quite a shocking thing. And then obviously, when we heard that a couple of Indian planes were shot down and the Pakistani response was quite strong and this and that. And then we thought, okay, probably that's it. Now both have something to boast about. Modi will say, I have done my job, and Pakistani army can say that, look, we have responded well. The next day and the next day, the drones are coming, and they were doing so many things. And then obviously the fighting were exchanged on line of control as well from day one. For the people who were on the control line or near that, we had a lot of friends. We were in contact with a lot of friends, and there, things were very bad, and people were being killed, injured, houses destroyed, and all this was happening, and it was happening every night. And then this last night, obviously, big things happened, and this morning, people contacted us from Barnala, different areas of Bimber, that they are leaving their houses, and we asked some of them if they want, they can come over here because there are a lot of empty houses there in Meerpur. And some of them went to Jhelum to their relatives, some went to Sargodha, they had relatives there. And Khurata, most of people, Khurata, we were told that Khurata is evacuated. But there is no transport arrangement from Azad Kashmir government. So people had to make their own arrangement. Government of Azad Kashmir did not appear anywhere apart from one press conference by Prime Minister. I think it was yesterday or day before that. Declaring emergency, and emergency means that all forces all institutions should be stay alert, rather than doing something about people who are being displaced, who are injured. Private ambulances, the volunteers from the local area or from the neighboring areas in Kotli, the Khurata and Bimber. These people were helping people, but the government was nowhere. So that is a very kind of that is something which people were not happy about. That where is our government? It looked like if it goes to next level, that will be big. That will be like hitting anywhere and everywhere from both sides.
I think I would also like to continue from what Shams said about the targets of those bombing and shelling on the first day. Because when the first night attack happened, I was away from my hometown and I was in Islamabad. And then my response to this was entirely different. I was so much active digitally. I contacted immediately my friends based in Kotli and my family based in Muzaffarabad. And then I was like so much agitated that my eyes stayed glued to the screen for the entire night, and I was unable to sleep until morning because there were people telling us that the shelling is still continued. We can still hear the voices. It is not anymore in the city. And it was also for the very first time in my life that I heard that Muzaffarabad or Kotli city is being bombed. So, the way we have normalized the bombing at LOC, even the people of the disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir have somehow normalized that LOC firing is like, everyday thing. Like they show a concern, they show a worry in their voice, but then after some time, it goes, it just evaporates away in again the everyday conversations and the activities. But bombing cities, and then also in the middle of the night when people were sleeping, there were no prior. I mean, there were this. Threats announcements in Dawn newspaper, as far as I remember, because there was the news that 24 hours are like the risky hours, and anything could happen. So it was a warning. But how many people reads the newspaper? But the other thing is that like there were no active measures or announcements by the military forces or the people who are responsible, for example, the government of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, who would have taken seriously these threats and might have announced something on via national media or via, like, these notifications via bureaucracy. We have these people working in the government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir sitting in each city, in each mohalla, with those MLAs seats and AC and DC and whatnot. But anyways, coming back to the target thing, so I don't know too much about Pakistani side. But in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, I would really want to comment on that, that if India would behave so irresponsibly by assuming that each mosque is a hub of terrorist activities, then it is like they really need to recheck their notes. So it is not like that. Like mosque is a space which is for worship and for prayers, and it is something similar that somebody targets any religions, worshipping places, and it is not at all allowed. The other thing is that um, the concern that Shams had also raised, that firstly India had the jawaz, like, a bahana, an excuse to escalate this all, that he blamed Pakistan, and it blamed Pakistan, and it was so convinced that the Pahalgam attack was being planned or carried out by or executed by the involvement of Pakistanis. Then why to hit Kashmir? First of all, in their heads, they have to think that the former state of Jammu and Kashmir is still in the, according to the international law, it's a disputed territory. It's not a, it doesn't exist in the world global map. It in the cartography, I mean, you draw it as a Pakistani territory, and India draws it as Indian territory, but it is still disputed. Pakistan has not accepted the Indian map, and India has not accepted the Pakistani map. And the people of Kashmir, I think there is a large body of opinion who does not accept both of them. So it is all in all disputed. So I think, as a resident of the former state of Jammu and Kashmir, it is my right to ask the question why. And then the entire uh, focus of the bombing and shelling was moved to the Azad Jammu and Kashmir. There have been shellings and attacks in the Pakistani territory as well. And then the Pakistani media started talking about the war crimes and breaking the international laws, because India could not attack a full fledged sealed border, and there are international protocols, and these are war crimes and whatnot. But when it comes to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, why do you have this line as a line of control? Because just to have an excuse that, yeah, line of control, it's normal because it is not a war crime if you kill people over there, because it is a line of control. So when you have to bomb us, then you take it as a line of control. But when you have to blame us, then you count this side, Pakistani administered Kashmir, as Pakistani territory, and Indian administered Kashmir as Indian territory. So this is like a visible hypocrisy. And the other question is that being a resident of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, I think it's my right to ask that why the civilians were being attacked in our part of the land. In Pakistan, most of the targets were okay. If their excuse was to eliminate the terrorists, they assumed that okay, in every mosque of Azad Jammu and Kashmir or in the biggest cities, each mosque is maybe working on the terrorists and terrorist trainings are going on there. In Pakistan, as Shams has recorded that okay, there are certain history associated with these two places that they have targeted. So they might have some kind of assumptions about that as well, which Pakistan entirely denies. And I'm also sure the kind of situation Pakistan is right now going on. Pakistan is dealing with a lot of other issues. It doesn't have time anymore for the terrorism. And the history that has been associated with Pakistani terrorism, everybody now knows it. Even America and US and all these countries have accepted that why these Taliban were being constructed and from where they have been trained and from where they have been funded. So, each one of us knows, at least the national governments of the countries and the stakeholders, they know who were those terrorists and who they were prepared by whom for what. But then somehow they shifted the focus in Pakistan from the mosques and the terrorists, so-called, according to their understanding, the terrorist hub, to the military air bases or the PAF or military posts, But why in Azad Jammu and Kashmir? I know I have been an insider. I'm not only listening the news from my distant relatives, but even the day my hometown was being hit, it was the same night when I arrived there. So when the attack happened on the night of 7th, I had planned to go, but of course everybody stopped me, and I was like so indecisive. But still, being away, I was so much active digitally, and I started writing this field notes from the fault line, because it was all coming to me, and I could not talk to my family in Islamabad at that day. I could not get involved in anything. I just took my pen and paper and I started writing those field notes and then I talked about this anthropology of conflict in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and I started my story that how my personal life decision that if I would ride on the car that I booked last night or not, it is now decided by some political escalations and some military escalations. So I'm no more, my life is no more in my own control. If I want to meet my mother, I am not the primary person who would take the decision that, oh yes, if in order to visit my own home, it's not my decision anymore, because like all the people who are working in different sectors, I also have friends and relatives who are working in army, let's say. So everybody has stopped me from going, and I myself, thought that, but people were unable to understand that you are telling me going to Azad Kashmir right now is going to a dangerous zone. So please stay wherever you are. But you are unable to empathize with me. How can I be at a safe zone when my entire family is in the dangerous zone? So that's how, on the personal level, it affects you. It really, really sounds so distant and so different on social media and on digital media than as it sounds on ground. So even I myself, being my family being affected, or my distant relatives, or my land being affected, I was still able to write and post things on social media, and I was, kind of the person who could give the information from the locals. And but second day, the entire day was kind of peaceful, and also the entire night was peaceful, and we also heard distant shelling, but not too intense. So everybody assumed that okay, India wanted to do to show its aggression and trying to give a message perhaps to Pakistan that we are really serious about but if they are serious, then go for the investigations. Why couldn't you find the terrorists, three preparators, if whom you assume were Pakistanis, and for that you have decided to bomb the entire country and even the people who does not belong to Pakistan. So first of all, they need to understand that Kashmir, if they use the Kashmir issue as an excuse to escalate wars or sell weaponry or use weaponry or use their, have their all of 70 and 50% of their budget being invested in defense and in establishment, then they have to accept that it still is an issue. It is not Pakistani territory or Indian territory. So these kind of conflicting perspective, I think they really need to be rechecked. And I am telling you, Sarina, if we ask during these days anybody from the people who belong to Azad Kashmir, and especially who got affected by these horrible shelling and bombing, if you ask them, no matter if they are mainstream political party supporters or if they are pro-independence guys, if you ask them what do you want, everybody was like, we don't care. Stop the effing bombs. We don't want to get killed. We don't care. Our children are scared. We are scared to death. Our property is getting harmed, and our life is at stake. And we are not sure if we will take this breath next moment or not. So right now we don't care about if we are pro-Pakistani or pro-Indian or pro-independence or whatsoever. Just stop bombing us. What had we do? And then I also do not understand like the policy of Indian government or Indian establishment, if they were so much they had grievances about having their citizens or the attacked, or having an attack on the land of India, as they say it, Indian territory. They cannot afford the human loss. Then how can they justify their act of killing so many people? If you're gonna play revenge and revenge, then it's a non-stop thing. If your 26 people were being killed, or 8 people were being killed, and then in return you're gonna kill 18, then in return they're gonna kill double of those numbers. So then where will it end? And if India, I think they also need to remember their very own leader, Mahatma Gandhi, and his teachings as well. So I think they have also forgot what their ancestors have been telling them and teaching them. So it's a human loss. It's not. I think, Serena, sometimes these discussions, because we have been doing it all day and night during these times, even before these times, I think they become redundant. Sometimes I just feel so ridiculous about all this that, okay, I and you are just wasting our words. I and you are wasting our energies, because it is not the way it looks. It's not only about that terrorist attack. It's not between India and Pakistan. It is not dispute on Kashmir. All of us knows that internationally Kashmir is at a very strategic position. There are international stakes are involved. China is a growing economy, not only economy, perhaps superpower. These developments happening in Russia and Ukraine front, developments happening, having Trump back into the power in US. So you never know. Pakistan and has always been a proxy, and because of this Kashmir issue, I don't know, and I think I also know who is benefiting from it, but I cannot say it for sure. What I can say is that who is being disadvantaged from this position are the people. I have no doubt about it, that who is on the disadvantageous position, and I am at advantageous position along with my family, with my friends, with my relatives, and we want this situation to be changed. And what we want is, we want you just finish this LOC. What does LOC mean? If it was being under this Shimla agreement, under these international laws, so where is the international community when it is being broken and abrogated again and again and again? The second thing, sorry, I think my conversation is getting too long. We should also get back.
There's a couple of questions that have come to mind, and they're slightly
Yeah.
different ones, and I'm trying to work out which one to. So maybe I should just put them out there. So the one question is, India says that it has evidence that this was a Pakistani-backed attack, that this evidence is credible and therefore actionable, etc. What do you understand about all of that? What is the local understanding about the evidence? Because it hasn't been forthcoming. So, and here in the West, some of the discourses are that India has made these accusations, Pakistan has not rallied against them or provided contrary evidence, and that somehow Pakistan is at fault because that's the discourse here. That was the one question. The other question I was listening to at the end there was, what does this all mean now? I mean, is this an opportunity to actually have a serious conversation about the independence or the sovereignty of Kashmiris, or does that all get lost when even now after a ceasefire, we're just going to be talking about India and Pakistan again, and which I think possibly is what both nations want as well. So yeah, two separate questions, but really, is there evidence, and what do people feel about it? And does this step now provide an opportunity, or is it largely going to be more of the same?
So to answer your first question, I think it is very interesting situation for me as well, because I have been in both the territories, Islamabad capital and then Azad Kashmir. So I have these conversations really from the locals over here. So and there are, like, the topic of the conversations are entirely different. We somehow just the Kashmiris are being submerged into these meta narratives of being Pakistani and being Indian. But seriously, if you hear even the drawing room conversations, if a neutral person would be sitting in Islamabad and staying there here, attending drawing room conversations for 1 week, and then attending the drawing room conversations in Kashmir, there is a huge difference. As Shams told, that he was there even during the time of Pahalgam attack. The hot topic or conversations over there were those action committee, those right movements going on, those new police military or police, I don't know, these new ranger police being introduced over there. So people of Kashmir are talking about the developments happening over there, but people of Pakistan are talking about the developments happening over here. So when India and Pakistan have some kind of conflict, they put Kashmir as we change a background over Zoom. It is literally like that. I just this metaphor occurred to me right now. You put a background of Kashmir because now you're going to appear in a public as two warrior countries, and then against that backdrop, against that background, I don't know what you guys are doing with each other. It has nothing to do with Kashmir and Kashmiris. That what you are doing, because what you are doing is you are killing us on both sides. So what are you gaining from it? Who you are working for? Why you are agree to this kind of escalations? If you Why you hitting the civilian posts, and why on the first place are you hitting the people in Kashmir, be it military posts or the civilian posts? And then I would like to add another layer over it. The horrible thing is that the soldiers appointed on LOC from both of the sides, because I have did my research work over there, and I've spoken to people and locals and also soldiers over there. Unfortunately, both of the sides, the soldiers are from Kashmir most of the times. So you are letting locals kill locals on both of the side, against the backdrop of Kashmir issue being played on your screens and on your wherever, on your papers and copy. So according about the evidence, I think the conversations I heard here, but I personally, I don't have any opinion about that, because I did not come across any authentic source which says that India found the evidence, and there is also a lot of misinformation going on. So I don't want to misquote anything. But the conversations, just let us just rely on the oral argumentation. Orally here, people in Pakistan, because the city I'm sitting in, or the kind of people I hang out with, they're all thinkers and these kind of critical minded people. They think that Pakistan right now had no interest in planting anything in India, in reawakening the Kashmir issue, because Pakistan was already dealing with a lot of internal issues these days, be it Balochistan issue. You are, I think, perhaps aware of that. There was a lot going on in Balochistan these past months. Then Pakistan was also hit by this climate changes, and entire Islamabad was being, affected by those big, how do we call it in English? I don't know. Yalabari, we call it in Urdu. Hailstorm. So there were a lot of harm going on. People's car were being damaged. People's houses, windows were being broken. So, and other than that, Pakistani internal political issues between the PTI and these government and opposition issues and all. So Pakistan had a lot in its plate already. So the locals of Pakistan think that it could not be planned by Pakistan. And we also know that when Pakistan even had those kind of training camps where these kind of activities were being supported or whatever, those times are over. Pakistan is right now also dealing with the Afghan, exodus, and so Pakistan is dealing with a lot. Other than that, Pakistan is also facing this economic instability. So Pakistan could not afford to have this. And again, if Pakistan had to do something, it is just my personal thought. When in 2019 that Article 370 was revoked on the Indian side, I think that was the right time to do something. If Pakistan had to answer, even at that time, the people of Kashmir, including people of Kashmir, were very disappointed that Pakistan could not do anything, and Modi just took it as a unilateral decision, and they make it as a union territory, unitary, and I don't know whatever. So after that, they started calling it Indian territory. Even they were claiming it before, but after that, they just say that it's no more disputed. It is Indian territory. So if Pakistan had to respond, I think that was the time when it could have done. And even the response of Pakistan, I believe, given that it would not have been through this kind of terrorist attack and attacking tourists. So it doesn't make sense. My personal opinion is that. But in Azad Kashmir, when I went there, so the situation, because when I went there a day before, people went through these attacks and shellings and missiles, and the night I arrived there, people were also faced by that. So there was no conversations about Pahalgam attack and about the evidences, was it right or wrong or what. People in Kashmir was not interested in what India and Pakistan are talking about. The other thing is that, but when I am telling you, I was telling you that when I was looking at it from distance, even though my heart and my soul and whatever I would say was there, I was still active on digital media. I was able to write things down. I was able to make sense of those things with the lens of anthropology. But when I was at ground, and when I heard those sounds, and when I we spent the entire night in a basement bunker. It's like a shelling bunker, and then we literally stay awake entire night. It was a very small one, and filled with perhaps 30 people. It was it was like we there was hardly any air to breathe, but we could not go out. It was so dangerous. The first bomb, when it was being shot, and we were like, the entire home was, it vibrated, and it was so loud that at the first hit, we just could not understand, because we were all in our own thing. Somebody was just getting ready to sleep, somebody was changing into night dress, my brother was in washroom, the other brother was outside having a drag. We all just could not understand what just happened. And the very first bomb, in the morning, we got to know, because it was so close, that way it was so loud, it hit the rooftop of my uncle's house. So it was like just next home, next door. So I was like, really, not only at first instance, I could not make sense of what just happened. And they didn't, when the firing and shelling starts, it does not give you the mohlat to make sense of it. The moment that you spend, or the seconds that you spend to make sense of it, you're hit by another. And then the most terrific thing about it is the sound that it creates. It comes with the sound of and then the blast. So the most terrifying thing is that sound, because when you hear the zzz, then you are sure that there is gonna one more blast, but you don't know where. It could come on your own roof. So when you hear the zzz, then it's being confirmed that, okay, one more is coming. And to be honest, we have been told these protocols that, just lie down on your belly and put your heads over here. One forgets all protocols when it starts unannounced, all of a sudden, in the middle of the night. Because when my family stopped me from visiting, then, because my family also did not want me to invite to the danger, the same feeling that I had, they also had. If I was so concerned that how can I sit in the safe zone when my family is in the danger zone, but they also had the same concerns, that why would we invite the one of the family member who at least somehow is in the safe zone. So the jargons that I'm using, when it was some ladai between India and Pakistan, so Islamabad is labeled as a safe zone. I am right now also sitting here. But why Azad Jammu and Kashmir is danger zone? We have not attacked Pahalgam. Pahalgam is also part of the former princely state. We are all locals. Why would we attack our own fellow people, be it tourists or locals or whosoever? So it is always like that, that people of Kashmir become collateral damage. on both of the sides. And then Serena, this is again, I witnessed the shelling when I was really very young, like 8 7 8 years old, and after 7 8 years old I witnessed it again at that time. So I had those memories, I could not let go of them, but now I have like really again those memories. But this time I could also make sense of one more thing. When I was kid, I could not make sense of that. You know, when we were hit by at least 6 to 7 bombs just here and there above the roof, and we were in that basement after this, because it just started all of a sudden. And when we got a room, a sans, because I have been there, so I am not very much fluent in my English, so I don't know how to just जिस वेला सा कि थोड़ा जा सा लब्या विच सा छोड़न ना time लब्या. So we just ran to the Artaya's home, where they had this bunker and basement. Um, but after that, we were the my hometown was not hit again. But then we kept on listening the distant voices for until like azan, fajr ki azan, until early morning. But then the locals could sense that when it was being shot from this side and when it was being shot from Indian side. So when it was being shot from Indian side, of course the voice is loud and we were being hit. But when it was being shot by Pakistani side, then we would hear the earth vibrate. So the entire thing would vibrate. So that vibrate is the vibration is produced by those big guns from which it gets launched. And then I heard people saying that a word of tasalli. Oh, ये हमारे वाले हैं. ये अब हमारी तरफ नहीं लग रहा. ये अब उनकी तरफ जा रहा है. At that point, I just thought, who is on? जिनकी तरफ जा रहा है. They're also fellow Punchis. They're also people from Jammu. They're also people from Srinagar. They're also people from Kashmir. So what are we talking about? Who is bombing whom? And on the news headlines, we are hearing that, yeah, India would do this and Pakistan would do this and this army Zindabad and that army Zindabad and Paindabad. I just don't understand these things. Same environment. We have the same jungles, we have the same animals, we have the same giddad ki awazein entire night. That is heard on the both sides. We never say that, oh, this is the jackal from Pakistani jackal and an Indian jackal. We don't know who is howling right now. It's just a jackal in the same jungle. So, yeah, this is so horrible, and this evacuating thing is also very terrible. Like then again, my hometown was bombed last night again when we evacuated. Also, as Shams mentioned, that there was a lack of transportation, and there was no uh, rescue to say. I mean, for example, if there was no involvement or support, moral support or economic support or any kind of support from the government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. I don't know, where were they? When I asked it, all of a sudden, even in our conversation, we just forgot about it, that it even exists. But somehow then we get, oh, yeah, it also exists. There is some local government as well. And people are saying that there is, I think, 53 people in that cabinet, and all 53 are in Islamabad right now. So, I mean, if you take vote from us, if you take tax from us, if you because in order to govern somebody, you need people. If we are your people, you are supposed to serve us, to give good governance. But in these difficult times, I mean, I don't know, they must have jari some bayan. I'm not very fond of watching television. So शायद उन्होंने टीवी पे आके कोई बयान शयान दिए हों इस्लामाबाद से बैठ के. Yeah, well, this is what locals told. So to be honest, I don't watch TV, so I cannot say. Maybe some of cabinet member would tell me, "Nay, madam, I was sitting in Kashmir at that time." But there is no official announcement. There is one more thing that I would like to mention, that we say that in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, most of the civilians were being hit. Also, the army posts were being hit. But in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, the thing is that the army and civilians are also very much intertwined. So there is, there is a army chowni in between the mohallas and in the city. So it is also made perhaps to separate them in this army workshop. One can say that the war protocols being exchanged between the sovereign countries, if we are not the sovereign countries, but we are also not that much jahil. We know that the protocols of war, the countries were being told by the hassas adare in advance. They have some threats, they know it. They have these warning things that they can warn people. But announcing it on some national TV that, oh, there is this emergency in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, the way Shams said. What does emergency mean? Stay alert. Okay, what do you mean by stay alert? Kya kare? Attention loge khade ho jaye. If in my hometown this had been announced that this muhalla should be evacuated because the army posts are very nearby, you are a responsible country and you could detect, recognize a pattern. Even not a pattern, yaar, just because of danger and warning, you could have sent those official announcements, because people don't believe on social media. In social media there is huge of misinformation and madness, and but I don't know, even if I was so unsure, I was happy about this ceasefire thing, but initially I could not cheer because I was not sure if even if it's true or not. So there should be these responsible kind of announcements or the notifications that you send. है ही कितना सा कश्मीर, मोहल्ले ही कितने से आपके यार, आप एक घर, आप मर्दमशुमारी करते हुए आपके पास सारी लिस्टें होती हैं, एक घर में कितने वोट हैं, कितने मेंबर्स हैं, आप एक एक घर में एक एक नोटिफिकेशन तो भेजो यार कि ये सारे इवैक्यूएट करो, फिर उसका एक बंदोबस्त भी करो. If things were escalating, so there should be these protocols. I mean, this is human life.
So I think, given that we've been talking for well over an hour now, it might be an idea to think about what next. So maybe it's definitely something to point in the direction of Shams, to think about, well, what next? Is this an opportunity to really do something, or are we going to just say, oh, here we go again until the next time it starts all over again? What do you think, Shams?
I think, the previous question, I don't think they have shown any evidence. But the other thing, what now? I think, this is an opportunity. But that opportunity can be availed only by Kashmiris on both sides, not one side. And Kashmiris on both sides have to realize that what are the ground realities today, not what was in 1947. Because I don't think the Jammu people would like to be part of any state which is governed by Muslims of Kashmir Valley or the Ladakhis. There are differences within the state. But the Kashmiris on both sides have to come to some kind of consensus that this is what we need to stand for to resolve this issue. And because there is no communication between different regions, so that is very difficult, task. I was suggested once by, the ex-minister of Gilgit-Baltistan, that if people of Ladakh and Jammu and Valley and Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, if 2-3 people from each region, if they can sit somewhere and discuss that, leave the final solution for later, but for now, there should be no hindrances for the development of these 5 regions. Pakistan and India, should agree with these people that yes, we will make contracts with you that if we use your resources, we will give you something in return. And if we give you something, you give some kind of social contract that people will have their internal freedoms, and they should have their the region should be developed, and there should be development infrastructure in place. There should be governance infrastructure, proper governance infrastructure, not like Azad Kashmir or as it is now. But people should be given opportunity to develop their governance system, their administration system, and their developmental infrastructure. And obviously, they can collaborate with the Indians or Pakistanis or the world, relevant world institutions or companies for these kind of development. So this maybe is the opportunity for. This is one thing. There are so many things that can be explored, but I think this perhaps is an opportunity for people of different regions of the state to communicate with each other and explore possible way forward, which is also acceptable to India and Pakistan. But at the same time, we must not forget India is run by a fascist government. I don't know what this ceasefire means and for how long it will stay intact. But to me, it is an opportunity. How people will use it, obviously, that remains to be seen.
So, using this opportunity, or having said that there is this ceasefire, and and then making sense of this war. So, this war could never get justified. The people who died and the loss. So that is a separate discussion. But let us talk about, like, what if we get a chance um to decide about what about this Kashmir issue now, and what about the LOC, and what about no more collateral damage, please. So I think, as an academic, as a local, and as a person who believes in peace, perhaps my opinion, being believing in peace, might sound naive, but I would still love to register that and record that. So that is what I want personally, is like, we must use, even if people of Kashmir have to protest for that, we must protest that we don't want any more cross border firing on LOC. So for that, even if you have to make it a permanent border, make it. The other thing is, actually, I have a being an academic, I have, Shams might disagree with me, but I respect his opinion if he disagrees, that the restoration of the former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir sounds a bit of problematic idea to me, because the former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, that was created in 1857, was a colonial project. It was not according to the wishes of the people that were being included in that umbrella term of princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. Even people of Gilgit and Ladakh and Baltistan, at that time it was Gilgit Agency, neither their name is included in Jammu and Kashmir. It it was a separate region. The only common thing is that I think we are all from mountains and the mountain people. I think even when Britishers created this princely state, most of the locals, including Kashmiris, what they call the Kashmir province, were unhappy, because it was not created according to the wishes of the people. It was created for British Raj fears of the Russian invasion from these areas, because this princely state of Jammu and Kashmir is strategically a very important area, and it had a history of the invasion route. So there had been many attacks from Afghans at some time, and then from Russia. So they fear that. So first of all, I don't endorse the idea of former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, because it was a colonial project, and it was against the wishes of the people, and it was not created, it was we call it like it was sold. Kashmir Valley was sold to a Dogra of Jammu, who was not even a Raja, Maharaja, or whatever. He was just a sepoy, and he betrayed his very own unit, an army. So we know it all. And when the Dogra Raj came to Kashmir, we also know that what kind of Raj they did. It was very despotic, it was very cruel, and people of Kashmir, and I think only the people of Jammu and only the people of Dogra family was happy from him. Even Dogra family was not happy from him when he did this thing with the Punch Jagir, by having these ladaiyan with Ranjit Singh and all. So these 100 years of princely state, I don't buy that idea, to be honest. Not only as an individual, but as an academic, as a researcher. Before that, when I did not dig deep into the research, I myself was a very much of a nationalist and wanting independent Kashmir and back the former princely state. Over the period of time, this is what these doctorate research does to me. It changed my idea of identity and idea of local of the former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. So what I expect or suggest from this incident and using this ceasefire line is that a very strong demand of permanent ceasefire on LOC. We cannot afford being collateral damage anymore. Find a solution, even if it is somewhere near to those 4 point formula of Musharraf, where at least the borders were open for the cross mobility, for the cross trade. There was this Srinagar Muzaffarabad bus. People started remarrying each other. People started meeting again with their families. And I think I want peaceful borders, and I would suggest, I think the most of so many people, at least the people who were being affected by this cross firing since 7 decades, they subscribed to this ideology. And I don't want to promote my ideology, that it's Komal's ideology or whatever. I this is first I see that people of Kashmir must demand, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, that there should be no LOC anymore. And the other thing is that we can have a referendum. Let the plebiscite happen, man. This is like my idea. If people of Kashmir want to know what they should demand after this, so this is my message to them.
I think that's a great message, actually. So I really appreciate tying it all up in terms of what to do next. And there is a way forward. There are many ways forward, but this one sounds like a very powerful one.
Yeah, let the plebiscite happen. Let the people of Kashmir decide.
Serena, I'm looking to you to perhaps think about how to wrap this up a little bit, and because I'm mindful of our audience as well. Because
yeah, of course, Shams, I think you're right. I mean, there are very practical steps that can be taken. So these are issues that remain. They haven't gone away. They will continue to be there. I think the suggestions that have been discussed during this conversation are wonderful suggestions. I really hope that this is a point within the story of our disputed state that we can perhaps really think about these. I know we were at this crossroads in 2019. I also just want to say that I agree completely with Komal, and I've said this in an interview with BBC Urdu. If Pakistan were ever going to attack, that would have been the time. And they didn't. That was the opportune time. It didn't happen. I know myself, again, this is my personal opinion, but the feeling on the ground from my visit since the abrogation is that Pakistan essentially felt this was a fait accompli. I mean, India annexed the territory, and what are we going to do about it now? So I think those are my concluding thoughts. Tahir, I don't know if you have anything to add.
well, I think that's nicely wrapped it up. Let's focus on hope, because that's the one thing we still have that's in our reach. We can learn from this recent episode, hopefully positive lessons. Empowerment is necessary for the Kashmiris, self-organization. These are long-standing issues. I think both nations, Pakistan and India, haven't treated the issue fairly, objectively. Of course they haven't. That's why we're still having these discussions today. I hope they can grow up a little bit more, and I hope that there's more realistic hope for the Kashmiris, because I think they've suffered long enough. So with that, perhaps hopeful note, but also wary of the fact that there are a lot of challenges still out there. I think it's been a great opportunity to hear from you, and hopefully this conversation will be useful for others as well. So thank you.